Hello everyone, this is Haley from Cartooners, and today I'm going to bring you our first Voltron Season 3 theory, and of course it is going to be the one that everyone has been talking about, the possibility that the Shiro we see in Season 3 is not Shiro at all, and is in fact a clone. This might seem a bit crazy at first, especially to those who haven't heard this theory before, because of course the Shiro that we saw looks just like the regular Shiro, acts just like him too, so how could this possibly be somebody else? Well, in fact, there is a ton of evidence for this conclusion that I'm about to make, so sit back and relax and enjoy the video. So before I get into the details of this theory, I of course want to give a first little impression about Season 3 as a whole. And of course for a lot of people this is a very mixed emotions season, mostly because there was a lot of things that happened that people were hoping wouldn't happen, but of course they did, to kind of replicate what happened in the original 80s series. This of course included, the changing of the lions, which a lot of people were not happy about, and I too was kind of like about this, but you know what happened, and hopefully with the return of our regular Shiro eventually, since it's going to talk about the clone Shiro in this video, we will have a switch back to how things used to be. That was just one quick little thing about a little gripe that I had about the season, but I do want to talk about a lot more in the future, so I'm probably going to have a review pretty soon out for this whole season, and so look forward to that so you can see my opinions in a lot more detail, maybe some other people's as well. So now to begin. This is kind of hard because there's just so much evidence for this theory, but actually probably the best place to begin is at the beginning of Season 3, Episode 7, The Journey. Now this is definitely one of my favorite episodes of the season, mostly because it focused on, this Shiro that we just kind of met, if you kind of listen to what I have to say about this theory a little bit, but it focuses on Shiro pretty much throughout the whole thing, his struggles to meet the paladins again, join back up with them, and it's just so creative, and just everything Shiro has apparently been through, how his hair's long, how he's so different. I just thought it was really cool, and let's actually start with the theory now, because I could talk about this for a while. But here we go. So, as the episode begins, pay attention to the imagery. So some of the first things we see are pink bubbles, which is almost like he's in some kind of tube, which is kind of a recurring thing throughout the beginning of the episode. And you know what a tube, could be in? It could be to clone somebody, and kind of like how I can imagine like an avatar or something, how their clones or their avatars actually are made inside a tube. This is pretty much how it's usually shown in, cartoons or movies. Then we see the galra symbol and Shiro's hand. Now this is important because it tells us something of a connection between the two. We know his hand is made of galra tech, so it is possible that this is a key piece of information in this theory. And what's interesting is that the show has brought up the fact before that Shiro's hand could be very dangerous. In Season 2, Episode 3, Shiro's Escape, Hunk and Pidge talk about how Shiro could have been tricked to believe some stuff because the galra implanted fake memories into his head. They conclude that his hand has the ability to store memories and directly link it to his brain. Now, of course, back then we thought not much of it, but now it's really coming into play, and this could possibly be foreshadowing as to what actually happened. Now, with this theory in mind, it gives a huge reason as to why the galra gave Shiro the robotic arm. They took his arm to get the DNA for the clone and replaced it with a robotic one to absorb his memories, which could later be given to the clone. Also, something to note, in Shiro's escape, the galra injects something into Shiro's left arm. Not sure if that was anything significant besides the fact that the injector looks like the one from The Journey. Now going back to The Journey. We see this new Shiro for the first time. He has super long hair, which is an interesting look, but also not super realistic considering how much time has passed. Hair grows at a rate about half an inch a month, so with the length of Shiro's hair, that would mean that he couldn't have cut it in at least a year and a half. To think that the paladins didn't form Voltron in that long would be quite crazy. And as this Shiro gets up, I should note that he has some difficulty walking at first, which makes sense considering this clone may have never used his legs before. Then he starts hallucinating, or at least we think he does. It's not really clear. But the most interesting thing in this segment to point out is that we see another Shiro. This Shiro looks like the one that we saw at the very beginning of Season 1. While it is definitely possible that this is the real Shiro, it's strange that he would be in the same attire. However, this is actually Shiro. It does then make sense that the clone would have all of Shiro's memories up until the ending of the second season. This still doesn't explain the long hair, but, that's kind of a mystery at this point. I would like to give a possible timeline of events that led to the creation of the clone and his eventual escape. And in fact, during some more flashbacks, we learned that the operation to create the clone was called Operation Kuron. and from this I will call the clone Kuron. So to begin, it started when Shiro was captured on Kerberos, then became a prisoner and eventually the champion of the arena. The Galra saw his potential and wanted to weaponize him, so they removed his arm and replaced it with Galra tech. They also saw the opportunity to clone him, and his arm gave him the DNA needed to create the clone. This somehow made it completely identical, including his scar. So this was stage 1. Then they used the memories gathered from the robotic arm and made them into a serum. The clone is encased in this liquid in the tube so he can remember all the events that have happened thus far. That's when stage 2 happens. A side effect of this could be the headaches Kuron gets, as he is getting a lot of information all at once and not over a lifetime like a human normally would. In addition, he is known to be subject Y0XT39, and not prisoner 117-9875, which Shiro was. They wouldn't need to change this unless it was a different person. And it is very much possible that Kuron is the 39th clone made. He was the first one to be successful. And finally, stage 3 is letting Kuron escape from the Galra ship to find the paladins. Of course, as many have noted, Shiro's escape was way too easy. Looking at how he got out of the ship, we can see that the robots either shoot at his feet or barely give it any effort. Even the aliens he meets on the planet he crash lands on say how it should not have been this simple to escape from a Galra cruiser. And looking at his method of escape, it is not very Shiro-like. He is uncertain and doesn't use methods we have seen Shiro use before in the past to escape from the Galra. Now all that right there should be enough to convince you that Kuron is not the paladin of the Black Lion that we have all come to know and love, but there is much, much more. How about the fact that the word for clone in Japanese is Kuron? That says a lot right there. Also, another fun fact is that the hallucination Shiro made by Hagar back in season 1 was nicknamed Kuro by fans because it means black while Shiro means white. What are the odds that long after people named this Shiro Kuro, we get a character most likely named Kuron? Pretty cool if you ask me. Now let's move on to Kuron's adventures in space. We see him travel for a week without food or water. From my knowledge, people can only go a few days without water, so it's very much possible that he was genetically modified to survive for much longer than a normal human. And when he is rescued, he later gets a new design, which includes new clothes and a new hairstyle. But the most important thing that happens to him after rejoining the other paladins is that he is no longer able to pilot the Black Lion. This makes little sense, as they were the ones to have the best connection to each other before that. Despite Keith being the current paladin of the Black Lion, he hasn't been with it for that long, so their bond couldn't possibly be as close as it was with Shiro and Black. So it makes sense that because this isn't Shiro, he can't pilot the Black Lion. However, the lion was able to sense him and get the paladins to rescue Kuron, so what gives? Well, it is possible that the Black Lion knew that he was in trouble and saw being close enough to Shiro that it couldn't tell at the moment, but when it got a closer reading on him, it realized it was the wrong Shiro. What's interesting is that the lion found him after he started remembering past events. Because Kuron has all of Shiro's memories, he felt close to everyone even though he really wasn't, and the Black Lion couldn't tell the difference until it was closer. This does make things quite sad for Kuron, who does not know he is a clone yet and is probably not going to have a good future. And while Keith is called Black's true paladin, this is said by Kuron and not Shiro. Therefore, despite what is currently going on, Shiro is not replaceable. Another point to bring up is why Shiro could have possibly been inside a Galra cruiser in the first place. Why would the Black Lion teleport him there? It is much more likely that his lion teleported him to somewhere he could be safe. A good place he could have ended up with is where Matt is. After all, they are good friends and I'm sure Shiro could be of some help. After all, we do see them together in this screenshot, and my hope is that this is the real Shiro. So my final piece of evidence comes from the 80s series. This is the season that really proved that the creators love callbacks to the original series. Not only did we meet Sven, who was that series' Shiro, we also saw the paladins change lines to reflect how things once were in the original show. But this is referencing Voltron, and not Beast King Go Lion, the source material for Voltron. In the original Japanese show, as I have mentioned before, the original pilot of the Red Lion was Takashi Shirogane. He's the character Sven in the American show. He was killed off early into the show's run, and later succeeded by his twin brother Ryu. With this in mind, what we are getting in the reboot is not a twin brother, but a clone. In fact, a clone in some ways could be seen as an identical twin because they are kind of the same person with the same genetics. So with Shiro going missing, Kuron magically appears a bit later to take his place, which really reflects the source material. And something else I would love to point out is that the Voltron wiki says on Ryu's page, Ryu and his brother Takashi are identical in appearance with only the length of their hair being different. And that right there is the most obvious difference between the two, so I really want this to be the case. But the question remains, Since Operation Kuron is most definitely a tactic created by the Galra to infiltrate Team Voltron from the inside, what is Kuron going to do to them? It seems as of now he is not fully aware of who he really is or what he was created for, but my best guess is that after some flip switches inside of him, he'll try to lure Voltron into a trap and be captured by the Galra. There are some possibilities that I could also talk about, but I just wanted to touch upon this topic for now. However, my hope is that Kuron eventually betrays his creators and learns to become a true member of Team Voltron. It'd be weird seeing both Shiros together, but I have faith it could work. After all, as many have been saying, this is not our Shiro. We need the real Black Paladin back, since I would say he is the one true leader of Voltron. Thank you Jack Sodas and Brain Coins for giving me some of the points in this theory video. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more Voltron content in the future, please make sure to subscribe and like this video. These videos take a lot of work to create, so any support is appreciated. If you want to go the extra mile, please consider becoming a patron. If you're a huge Voltron fan and want to see a particular theory covered, then this is the place to go. So thank you patrons, and thanks for watching.